Pierce, thank you very much for joining me on the first episode of Scaling Your Business podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for those who are listening, Pierce is the founder and CEO of Equine MediRecord, and he's also listed on Ireland's 30 under 30, a former pro North American rugby player representing the Ohio Aviators. And his business was recently listed in the Business Posts as one of the top 100 startups in Ireland. So Pierce is well worth listening to over the next 45 minutes or so. Pierce, for today's show, the overarching theme of the podcast is obviously scaling your business. We've identified 13 kind of blind spots that can damage an otherwise healthy business. I want to dive into 4 of those today. Each of those blind spots breaks down into 6 categories. The 4 categories I'd like to dive in today with you are planning, positions, people, and process. Specifically spending a bit of time in people, because I know prior to this recording we had a chat, and one of the things you raised with me was, Rian, there's not 13 blind spots, there's 14, and the 14th one being client retention. So I'd love to spend a bit of time on that as well. But jumping straight into the first one on planning, the first question I have, and I'll say the question and then I'll back it up with what I'm hoping to get out of you, is what is your personal vision? And when I ask people that question, the best way I can get them to put it is we break it down into 3 different things. So it's, we provide whatever you provide X to insert buyer persona so they can, and the results they can get. So for example, it could be like, we provide marketing services to SaaS-based leaders so they can get more people to come to their events. So in your world, what's your personal vision?
Yeah, so Equine MediRecord, what it provides is a software platform to help trainers, vets, and owners record all of the relevant information relating to anti-doping and animal welfare regulations in the equine industry. So if you own a horse, to put it in English, I'll put it in English now. If you own a horse, there's a number of rules you have to comply by for the welfare of that horse. And it can get very complicated very quickly, depending on what the horse is doing, what it might compete in, what country it's competing in. The rules change. So if you're a trainer and you're racing a horse in France, it's different rules than racing the horse in Ireland. It's different rules racing the horse in the UK. If you're doing equestrian sport, the rules are different. So, and then if there are things like flu outbreaks, so there was an equine flu outbreak in 2019, there was a number of regulatory changes in a matter of weeks. So essentially, horse owners and trainers are quite time strapped. They don't have the time to be going through pages and pages and pages of regulations. So we gave them a platform that basically said, look, if you keep this platform, you put in the information that it requests, you don't have to worry. You will be compliant. You will stay on top of the latest regulations that come out due to the latest research on how best we can look after our animals. So that's kind of what we do. You come at a time where it's very topical. So I read in the Sunday Times this past weekend, I don't know if you saw it, but a very well-known trainer in Ireland, a guy called Jim Bolger, came out and said that essentially more needs to be done to look to tackle doping in horse racing, which is a very powerful statement coming from one of the best trainers in the country, basically saying we need to do more, as well as there's a Horse Racing Integrity Act going through the United States Congress at the moment, specifically looking at this as well. So it is very much at the forefront of people's minds in the little circle and world that I kind of run in the equine industry. And essentially, we are trying to provide a platform to help everyone, because everyone's in the industry, loves being in the industry because of the animals. And so we want to provide a platform where they can easily know that, yes, I'm doing everything I can to look after the well-being of this horse. So that's what we do.
Wow. I'm sure you save your clients a lot of time. I'm curious to know, though, what would, if I'm a jockey or if I'm someone who has to make sure I'm dotting all my I's and crossing all my T's, what did the world look like 4 or 5 years ago before you guys were around? Other than time, what else are you helping them? What other frustrations are you helping kind of disappear for them?
Yeah, so this came out of personal need. So I can tell you exactly what it was like because my family owns a thoroughbred breeding and racing operation on the Curragh in Kildare Field House Stud. And at the time, once I'd finished my very short-lived professional rugby career, I came back to do a master's in business in Trinity, and I'd be down on the farm and I was helping out. Someone was sick who was usually keeping on top of this documentation. I said, okay, I have no problem. I'll help out the best I can. And it was really complicated. And I was going, oh my Lord, like imagine if, you hadn't, finished high school, you hadn't, gone to do a third level education, and you're now expecting people to basically keep on top of these really complex veterinary regulations. I just was going, there's got to be a better way than this. And it was a big paper book. So it's a massive paper book that you have to put in all the medical information into. And then all of the information is mixed in from all the horses within the yard. So if I had a horse go and compete in something, I'm having to look through the records of all my horses to basically make sure that he's allowed to compete and is safe to do so. So, we only had, kind of 2 dozen horses. And I was going, how are the professional yards doing it who have hundreds of horses? I was just going, this has got to be a huge issue. So we did a bit of research. We found out, yes, that it was the case. And essentially, I went with my co-founder, Simon Hiddery, who I'd known since school, I went to college with, and I went to the various regulators and I said, look, if we raise the funding to build a platform, to basically have a way of recording this information for trainers, would you deem this compliant instead of the various paperwork that we're given? Now, it took 2.5 years of negotiations with the regulatory bodies to get that approval because it hadn't been done before in the world. So it took some time to get it, but then we did. We launched in the middle of 2018, and subsequently been approved in the UK, France, and the United States, in Kentucky and California. So essentially, it's not only a time saving, but as I said, it's keeping on top of these regulations.
Yeah.
So when the equine flu outbreak happened, the time schedules of when you had to have vaccinated your horse before it could go compete completely changed. So it became way stricter because obviously there was a pandemic in horses happening. So people had to know at a click of a button what their horse had been given, or else if you go back on Twitter, people who didn't have our system were going through paper passports and going through hours trying to look through, oh, is this one okay? Yeah, it's fine. Is this one okay? Yeah, it's fine. And they were basically manually having to check all this paperwork. Whereas our guys were able to just click a button, and we really kind of started to scale after that because it was a perfect test case of why do you need a system? And it was like, well, this is why.
Talk about identifying your prospect's pain. You have it on your hand. You're given to your hands there. But other than identifying pain, because there's a big thing here with adoption to tech, and you shared a report with me, a McKinsey report that showed that the equestrian industry has been the last to adapt to like digital technology. On a graph, it featured in the bottom left quadrant, which for those who read quadrants, that's the place that you don't want to be. So was there any pushback from kind of old timers, or do you have any stories of any pushback of people not willing to adapt, or were people just eating this out of your hands once they understood that you tick all the boxes for the regulatory firms?
Yeah. So in that McKinsey report, it was actually all of agriculture. So it wasn't only the equine industry; it was all of agriculture. And it was basically saying that in terms of digitization and adoption of technology, agriculture was dead last. So essentially, there was a bit of kickback. I won't lie to you. There are some people who, but that's the same in any innovation. If you look at kind of how different initiatives and technology is adopted, whichever industry you go in, there's the early adopters, and then you kind of move into the general, and there's always a lag off of people who will be the last people to kind of move. So I don't think it was any different. And to be fair, some of our most early adopters, how do I put it, were not spring chickens by any way and means. So kind of classic winning trainer John Ox was one of the very first people to support the initiative, even before we had a product fully launched. So he was testing with us, and he supported us from the get-go because he understood the pain point, and he understood like this was the future. And so I don't think it's a age, especially in our industry. It's quite interesting sometimes. Some of the people who are most adverse to adopting technology are some of the youngest. Really interesting. I don't know why that may be the case. Yeah. So we've had 20-year-olds who, wouldn't like doing things on their phone or on computers. They like the paper. I guess it's kind of, what you're used to.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is showing the benefits. Once you're able to show the benefits of people kind of going, gosh, I have to go through passports for 4 hours to figure out this information, or I have to go through the medical books for 4 hours to figure out this information. And a friend goes, oh, really? Oh, no, I have the Equine MediRecord platform. I just click a button, it does it for me. That's kind of where you really get the mass adoption, because it's we talk about marketing, we talk about sales, the best thing is a referral from someone you trust. Sure. So if someone goes and that they're doing the exact same job as you, and you're a friend of theirs, and you're going, geez, I hate when I have to go and do all that, and they go, oh, you haven't heard of this new technology? It just saves me so much time, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like even last week, we had someone we had tried to do some outbound sales with, didn't have much luck, and we got an email back going, oh, we've just had someone new come to work for us who used your platform in another training operation and said we need to get it, so we'd like to sign up, please. And I'm going, I did speak to you like a year ago, but anyway, yeah, of course.
Well, so it just shows technically you only ever need to make one sale, and then the rest of it can just be referrals.
It's the hardest sale. The first sale is the hardest one. It is really tough. Once you start to have a nice kind of portfolio of clients that, you can say, oh, well, call XYZ. Especially in our industry, it's very, very small. So there's a lot of crossover where they know each other. It's 1 degree of separation, and they use it. Okay, I'll call them next week. So.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about later on in the podcast, but we'll jump into it now, seeing as we're there. It's we met at what I think is now called the Executive Institute of Ireland, was the Sales Institute, and you shared with me the reason you were there was because you wanted to get better at door-to-door sales, if I'm not mistaken, knocking on doors and selling to people. But what I'm hearing from you now is the biggest area of growth for you is just referrals. So, what was your original strategy to grow the company to get that first sale, and now are you solely reliant on just referrals?
No, I wish we were. No, no, we still do. We'd still do kind of. I wouldn't call it door-to-door sales, because we're kind of more targeting B2B at this stage.
Yeah.
So now we built up a kind of a portfolio of clients. We're going to organizations. So we had a bit of a shift. At the beginning of this year was our first kind of commercial contract that we signed. So we signed a contract with the Arabian Racing Organization in the UK. So they essentially have every purebred Arabian racehorse in the United Kingdom is a member of theirs. So they wrote into their rules that their members have to keep our system. Nice. So we had, basically a massive influx of clients, where instead of having to go and sign up each individual yard, we essentially had like 100 trainers come on. And, it just showed that that's really where we should be focusing our energy, because, if we wanted to try and get every trainer in Ireland, the UK, and further abroad, and then looking at North America, you'd have to have a huge sales team going door to door to try and do this. And so the only other way was to do it by selling it to the organizations and associations. So that's kind of what we've done. So that was our first one we did. And then subsequently we signed a contract with the Irish Welfare and Veterinary Commission, which
Nice.
regulates a form of racing in Ireland called standardbred racing. So it's a certain breed of horse. And then subsequently into the US with the Kentucky Thoroughbred Association, Thoroughbred Owners of California, and just last month with the Breeders' Cup World Championships, which
Wow.
is kind of the World Cup for
Yeah.
thoroughbred racing in the world. So we had horses from Japan and United States, obviously Germany, France, Ireland, UK, you name it, where they had racing. This is where they came because the prize money is the largest. So it's massive as a business to be able to get that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lesson in that itself. You know, when you start a business, both of us have started one. There's multiple avenues you can go down, personas you can try and target, and you can easily get distracted by trying to take on six of them. Whereas if you just focus on one of them, it's much easier to grow and far less distractions. Look, on planning, one of the other things I wanted to touch on was your top three priorities for the business. You mentioned and I have a note here, Breeders' Cup is a contract that we recently won. I'm wondering, as we exit 2020 and go into 2021, what are your kind of top three priorities? And I'll say that for any of the listeners who want to participate, one of the exercises we do is we get people to pick three priorities and only focus on three so that you can actually measure and tackle the three. And then within each of those three priorities, there's three questions we ask. And the first one is, what's the impact on the organization if you do something? What's the impact if you do nothing? And what's the impact if you're successful? So over to you, Pierce, in terms of what's your three priorities as we go into the new year.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, given kind of the current political climate and how the industry may be affected come the 1st of January, unfortunately, with Brexit, we have focused more and more on growing our business in the United States, just because it kind of lowers our risk profile. It's huge in terms of the equine market. It's the largest equine market in the world in terms of horse numbers, almost to the point where it has half the horses of the world just in the United States. So it is a huge market, and there's just so many players. So our kind of goals are to continue our expansion there, to really push forward, specifically looking at California, because they are ones right now who are bringing in a number of regulations for horse owners due to some problems they were experiencing last year. So our kind of priority is to increase our customer base in California and then expand into more states, because these regulations that we deal with are done at a state level. So we need to get approval from the various state government bodies. So we were approved by the Californian Horse Racing Board. And so we would have to be approved by similar boards across the United States. And the good news about the CHRB, California Horse Racing Board, was they were very positive about our product. The executive director, Scott Cheney, came out in support of it, which is big to have, the Californian state government, the largest state government in the United States, basically saying this is the way forward.
That's a win.
Something like this. So it just gives us huge credibility. Our thing will be, expansion across the US as well as other international markets in Asia. So that's kind of our priority at the moment.
Nice. Next area I want to focus on is positions. So specifically, for those working with you or partners of Equine MediRecord, how do you incentivize people?
I think there's a number of ways. So in terms of, when if it's partners, there's various commission structures that you can look at, mutually enforcing. So, there's a lot of complementary kind of systems, farm management systems, looking at kind of owner invoicing and kind of the day-to-day stuff, things that we wouldn't be involved in. We're very much focused on the compliance angle and making sure people comply, just because, we have to be focused on that, because they're changing a lot. And if we get it wrong, there's big implications. So that's our main focus. So we have a number of partners who essentially, if we make introductions into clients that we have, who obviously are pro technology, using our technology. Sometimes it's the first software they've ever used. And, so they'll still be doing paper invoices and paper kind of communications. And we go, hey, have you looked at this farm management software that can automate all the various invoices that you're sending out? Or, oh, have you looked at this software that, helps communicate with owners? And so essentially that the way that we incentivize kind of working with our partners and our partners working with us is to say, obviously, that if those referrals occur, there's a commission for the referring party. So there is obviously a material benefit. So I think that's really helped. We have amazing partners in the UK, really helped us at the beginning to get traction there. And they were softwares that the yards had been using for sometimes decades. So it was great to have that nice, warm introduction from someone they trusted, rather than, oh, here's this new startup business in Ireland, who has this new technology, but, should we trust it? It was, no, I've been providing you your yard management software for the last 10 years, and I'm telling you these guys' system is good. You should have a look. So I think that's probably the best way, where it's a win-win. I think is the only way where you can kind of incentivize partners to work with. You got to find those win-wins, and it doesn't always have to be commission. You know what I mean? There can be other win-wins, especially in our industry, where you can invite them to certain race days if you kind of have access to race days, or introduce them to very high-profile jockeys you might know, or things like that, where it doesn't cost anything, but it's just, we have a shared love of the equine industry. So we've had some times where we've invited our partners to race days, they've invited us to race days. So it kind of builds that partnership on another level as well.
You've got a real passion for the industry, Piers.
Well, I grew up in it. My family's been involved for at least 5 generations.
Wow.
And I think everyone who works in it, there is something about horses. And you see it now. I've seen a number of projects, one that's backed by the Ireland funds, that are using horses to help provide therapy for people, who have certain disabilities, and they're calming. There is something special about them, and I think anyone who's kind of worked in the industry feels that, and it feels that kind of, not only a responsibility to look after them, but a desire to kind of be in the industry and work with these amazing animals. So, I think it's a responsibility of everyone to try and ensure that everything is being done.
Do you get time? Do you get time to enjoy the big races like the Grand National, or are you still on a clockwork, or I call it pay time?
Well, the great thing is, where I go to some of these events and I really enjoy it, but it has a work element because I see my clients. I was I was over at the Breeders' Cup for the contract, and I obviously was working and providing a platform we specifically built for them. And one of our first clients in the UK was a trainer called James Fanshawe, and he had his first runner at the Breeders' Cup, and it won. Nice. And it was just so amazing. I went up to him after and I said, congratulations. And it was just the greatest, because I'd seen him earlier in the week, and I was going, oh, the very best of luck. Thank you so much for supporting us. I really hope you win. And then he won. And I just thought it was a perfect kind of segue into what we had been doing, and that progression that we're on, that our first customer who supported us, now when we get our first contract or first time working with Breeders' Cup, he has his first winner. It was just perfect synergy.
Yeah, it's certainly a nice way of nurturing the relationships you have by attending these events, because sometimes you might want to switch off, but by going to them, it's a great way to keep those relationships alive. And I'm sure there's referrals that come from them as well when you're at these events. Next area, which is an area that I wanted to focus a bit more than the other two, it's people, and specifically because around the retainment side of things. Look, you're an Irish startup, and you're trying to compete with the likes of Google, Microsoft, HubSpot, the big guys, for talent and also retaining talent. So how do you recruit people? First off, do you use, outsiders? What did I call them? Independent outside consultants, or do they come from referrals from your clients? Like your current staff and future staff, how do you recruit people?
We do a bit of both.
Okay.
So when we recruit, we do use recruitment agencies as well as referrals from clients. So it is a bit of both, but there's a reason. Like when I first did it, and this was from when I first did it, it was only from referrals. So when we started kind of 4.5 years ago, it was kind of asking our clients, we're looking for this type of job. Do you know anyone who might be a good fit? Um, and we hired some people who, looking back, probably we shouldn't have. Um, but I was kind of the mindset going, oh, why do I want to be paying commission to a recruiter? I can just interview the person. I can find out. And it's only once you see the pain of trying to find good
Mm,
people and you go, there's a reason why these firms exist. And
yeah.
it's because it's hard. It is really hard to find the right fit. It's not that, it's that people who've worked for us may just have not had the right skills fit for what we needed. And it wasn't articulated by me because I just had never recruited anyone before. So then, as you kind of said, it's once you find those people, how you hang on to them is another massive problem because, as you said, it's great that we have all these multinationals here in Ireland. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of meet various people and just share ideas. And if you're looking to kind of partner with various companies to deliver projects or do research, honestly, we're probably the best situated in Europe to do that because of all the multinational organizations we have here. But then trying to retain your talent, especially when they've proven themselves to be very good at what they do, um, you've got to try your best to incentivize them through other means bar monetary because you're not going to be able to compete.
Yeah. Well,
Man,
before we jump into that, a couple of business owners who I work with across the country, out west, central of Ireland as well, and they've said to me, Rian, the only way that I can compete or even attempt to compete with the giants in Ireland and find good staff is I have to have a base in Dublin. They want to stay in Westport. They want to stay in, oh God, anywhere, Barna, but they've got to move to Dublin so they have enough talent to pick from without having the physical location in Dublin, and that has changed with COVID. They just don't have the number of people to pick from. I'll give you an example. There was a company out in Westport, and they put up an advertisement, and they got 4 people applying for the job, of which none of them suited. They moved to Dublin, and they got 300 people applying for the job, of which only 12 to 13 suited. But the reach and the talent pool in Dublin is far greater than small pockets outside of Ireland. So what I wanted to explore with you was, let's say you hire me. I have a passion like you for the industry. Is there a plan for what the first kind of 30, 60, 90 days look like? Or is it you have a passion for the industry and it's just we go to whatever events are there?
yeah, no. So I would challenge a little bit I'd assume maybe because there are just more people in Dublin
Yeah.
that it's easier. But in terms of some of the best people we've hired have actually been from outside Dublin. Now they were in the what I would call the Dublin
Greater
belt.
Dublin area, yeah.
Yeah, because we're Kildare.
Mm.
But I know, having spoken with a number of friends who run businesses, Cork has a very vibrant startup
Mm.
ecosystem and has a lot of great people down there. So I guess in terms of volume, you are correct, but I think you can find people outside. And as you said, I think especially with coronavirus and digital work in what we do with software, I think you'll start to see more and more people outside of Dublin who don't
Definitely.
pay the high rent and will locate outside of Dublin, have good internet connection, good Wi-Fi. So I think the model of having to have a presence in Dublin
Hmm.
to may not be the case anymore. We'll have to wait and see.
Fingers crossed. Well,
yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it goes.
You're a Kildare man. I'm a Meath man, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, but yeah, in terms of talent, you gotta, especially if you're a startup business, I think you have to have some sort of employee equity scheme.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do it, like, obviously it vests, so you wouldn't be giving them any sort of equity early on, but that's how you compete with the likes of the Googles and everything else, that you sell them in that vision and you go, look, this is where we are. I'm obviously not going to be able to pay you what the Googles and the Facebooks and all these people can pay you, but this is our goal, this is our growth, this is our pipeline, this is our kind of strategy. Work with us for the next number of years. We will get to a place where we'll be able to pay you very well, but really then what you'll have is equity in this business that you've had a massive role in growing. You won't be a cog in a machine where, you don't really feel like you're providing a lot to the organization as a whole. If you left, would they be easily going to replace you? Whereas in kind of a startup or a small business, you are invaluable to the team and you have a massive impact on how that business is driven. And then obviously, because we work in an equine industry, having people who are passionate about the industry and going, look, we've been so fortunate to work with clients all over the world and travel and be able to go to things like the Saudi Cup down in Saudi Arabia, and then over to Breeders' Cup, and here in Ireland the Irish Derby, and over in the UK to Royal Ascot. You're going to be able to go to some of the top events from around the world in the industry that we love, and would you rather do that, or would you rather, be in an office working for a Google or a Facebook and everything else? And yes, you get well paid, but at the end of the day, how much impact are you actually delivering on Facebook?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and some people will go, you know what, I'm very happy, I'll go work with I want to have, the security of being part of this massive billion-dollar company, even though Facebook at the moment, with stuff happening in the US, probably not a good example to choose.
Sure.
But essentially that they would rather do that and kind of have that 9 to 5, very kind of easy, or clock out. There's loads of people, so I don't have to worry about clients emailing on a Sunday or calling late at night or early in the morning. I'm fine, someone else can handle it. Whereas if you want to be part of something where you have an impact and you're actually driving the overall strategy of the business and growing the business, and basically it's kind of like seeing a child grow. You had a tiny baby when we met, and it's starting to walk now, and
like
now
that.
kind of grow up. And that's how I think a lot of entrepreneurs would view their business, is this is kind of a journey. Do you want to come and nurture this child, or be part of kind of a machine that's already running?
I like how clear you are in that. Do you want to be part of this journey, or part of the bigger, greater machine? And there's nothing wrong with the wanting the secure job. I know a lot of friends who've taken that route. It also sounds to me like, from when we've previously spoken and what you've said there over the last 90 seconds, is that you kind of tie the corporate goals to their personal goals.
Yeah, no. So that's the other thing. So if someone comes in and goes, you know what, I really want to improve, my knowledge of CRM and sales, and I want to come in and really be customer facing. I want to kind of improve my communication skills. I want to, improve my kind of interactions with clients. In a small organization, you can make that happen very quickly. You go, okay, no problem. This is where we can kind of do it. We can work together. We can figure out exactly what you want to improve. You can shadow some of our team who already do that. And we're happy to, whereas it's a lot harder because these large organizations, there's a huge bureaucracy. You might not be able to see the client. They're not able to talk directly with a client. I have friends where they do customer service and they reply, but then their email to the customer actually has to get sent through someone who has to reread it before it goes out. So really, how much customer relation are you actually doing? Because, essentially you never get to see a client a lot of the time. So yeah, you can really kind of, I find you're just able to learn so much more, because you're doing everything. You're doing a bit of marketing, you're doing a bit of sales, you're doing, overall finance, and everything is, because it's a small organization, you can't have any dead weight. Everyone's got to pitch in, and sometimes, there might be more customer relations and bugs occurred on the system, and you've all got to react and talk with all the clients. And obviously, because it's a small organization, you don't have a whole team to do that, so everyone's on the phone going, look, something's happened, don't worry, we're fixing it, it'll be fixed in an hour. But essentially it's all hands on deck. So I think it's very much, if it's a learning that you're looking for, especially kind of a holistic learning experience, I would kind of recommend looking at a scale up, looking at a startup, going in. You'll learn a lot more than going into a big organization where you're very focused and you're doing this one task. That's all you're doing.
Yeah, you're very clear in what you're looking for, and I know it all too well. Before I jump into one of the questions I had for you, for the listeners who are listening and looking at hiring, one of the things that we have here is a function worksheet where we go through the 6 things that you should look for in a new hire. And then you can rate your hires or your current employees on a scale of 1 to 10 and see where they sit, and then sit down with them and go through company culture and whatnot. I'll leave a link to those worksheets free to download to sit down with your employees and yourself as well if you'd like to access them. But back to the interview, Pierce. I know that feeling all too well. A bit of sales, a bit of marketing, a bit of finance, and ultimately, technically, not being able to switch off or not knowing when something's going to come into your head. I was out for a run on the weekend and all was well, and then all of a sudden a deal comes into your head, and it's just you're working through things. The cogs are wheels are turning. You mentioned to me in our pre-chat that you've seen, explosive growth year on year for your company, yet you didn't seem fully satisfied. I'm not saying you're not happy, but you have that relentless drive for more. Why and where does that come from?
Well, yeah, I think like we'll obviously with 2020 and the challenges that it brought, we're very happy and fortunate that we did have growth. We were able to launch into the United States. We were able to get our system approved via Zooms, and that brought interesting experiences with it. But we had planned, obviously, pre the pandemic starting, that a lot more kind of growth. Just a little bit of background, I won't go into too much detail, but we were supposed to speak at a conference, which is the American Association for Racing Commissioners International, so the ARCI. They we're supposed to hold a conference in April in New Orleans on equine welfare, and we were one of the, I think, 3 speakers who were going to speak at it. And this is the one time a year that all the state regulators come into one place. So we were going, here we go. We're going to have the one time of the year where all of the people we need to speak to are in one place, and we'll show them the system. We'll get it approved by various states, even if it's not all of them, even if it's some of them, say 10 of them, and then we'll be able to launch into 10 states. We'll scale up our team, we'll raise some capital to do so, and we'll really have that massive growth that we're looking for. And then, of course, the pandemic comes in, and so that meeting was supposed to be in April in New Orleans. It still hasn't been rescheduled. So we had to kind of do the best with what we could. So as I said, we deployed a system into Kentucky. We got approved in California and deployed a system there. We did the work with the Breeders' Cup. So we were fortunate enough that it didn't stop us. It's just we didn't have that massive imprint straight away across the United States, one big go that you'd want. But that's kind of 2020 for you. And I shouldn't be saying, or given some of the struggles that people have had to go through, we're very, very fortunate, and we're very blessed that we've had the year that we've had. But of course, given the context, you kind of go, God,
Yeah,
we worked so hard to get to that point and get the invite and get everything and line things up. We did a entry strategy. We had investors kind of ready to go, and then that it just. But look, that's life.
it is. Well, look, every great startup has a number of hiccups, and if they push through them, it makes their success story even greater. Well, my question for you though, is that meeting happening in April 2021?
I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully, please God, it does. But yeah, we'll be following up in January to find out. But it's something where I think we'll be in an even more powerful position. It might be a blessing because whereas before we had no footprint in the United States and we're going to this meeting and we're saying, look what we've done in Europe, we want to do the same here in the United States. Now we'll be able to go into the meeting and go, well, look what we've done in Europe, but also look what we did while, you know, the pandemic was happening and half the country was in lockdown and everything was happening and it was complete turmoil, but still look what we were able to achieve. And, you know, it's something where it actually may be relatively easier to kind of get to that
Yeah, you will. If the dates are correct, you said what, April this year that it was supposed to happen, and you successfully signed off on the Breeders' Cup in what, November. So going into it, if it happens next April, you've got the Breeders' Cup underneath your arm that you didn't have going into this April. So,
yeah.
um,
Mm.
uh, last area I want to look at, and I want to just touch on this briefly, was the process specifically. You seem to be juggling a lot. You make the lives of your clients a lot easier, and they no longer have to carry around encyclopedia-sized books with them anymore. But you yourself must juggle a lot of balls, from trying to retain top talent to trying to acquire new customers to dealing with curveballs thrown at you like the coronavirus. But uh, if you were to try juggle all those balls with just the memory of your head, you'd probably fail if you're anything like me. How do you keep track of it? Are there go-to system software processes that you've taken from, you said you came up, you reared it up in the equine industry, or your specific industry, the agriculture industry, was the least tech adopted. So what do you use to keep track of everything?
Yeah, I think the key thing before I get into specific systems is you got to have a good team. You
Yeah,
can't do everything. You
for
just
sure.
you physically can't. I understand, and you might look at kind of the press now, and it's all Elon Musk and it's all Jeff Bezos. I'm telling you right now, they have amazing teams behind them, and they even say that. And they, when SpaceX does something, if Elon Musk's first thing is, oh, our amazing team at SpaceX and the great work that they put in, they understand that, no one can know everything. And no one can think of everything and no one can keep on top of everything. You need a good team. So I'm very fortunate, that I found a great co-founder early on in Simon Hillary, and my COO, who happens to also be my brother, Finley Dargan, who joined me, quit his job at KPMG once we started to really start to scale and get customers. So he came on board. So they handle obviously two massive key areas of the business, which is the technology side and the kind of the day-to-day operations side. So then obviously from my perspective, my kind of key things that I have to keep on top of obviously is looking at the overall picture. I do a lot of the business development, the sales, and kind of basic strategy on where we're going and dealing with the various stakeholders. And that's a key thing that we have to deal with, just because the equine industry has so many stakeholders. So when we were launching our first product in Ireland, we had to talk with, the likes of the Irish Thoroughbred Breeders Association, the Irish Trainers Association, the Irish Department of Agriculture, Veterinary Ireland, Veterinary Council of Ireland, the Irish Welfare and Veterinary Commission. So that's just, and then Horse Sport Ireland from an equestrian point of view. So that's 7 different organizations that we had to talk to. So those are really quite important things in terms of what we're doing, just because we are a regulatory technology. And I find that you do need a system. And I think it can depend on the individual. Just personally, the one that I've used, that I've kind of used for the business from the beginning, which was a bit suggested from my co-founder Simon, was HubSpot. I think HubSpot's a great platform, especially for you know, a startup in the early stages. It isn't too intensive, and then you can kind of start to add on modules as you grow. And kind of everything that we do would be captured in HubSpot, because you can't remember everything. It's not possible. So, you know, automatically send out tasks to various team members. It'll kind of identify if, when you're talking with clients, what was being discussed and various things. So I just think you need to have some sort of system, even if it isn't a HubSpot, even if you still have the paper diaries that you keep everything in, you know, and you're writing everything into.
Yeah.
You can't keep it all in your head. It's
No,
not.
for sure.
It's not possible. You'll miss something. You will miss something.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, I just think it's not so important as in what you have to keep, but have some source of process that you do have, so that you don't let things fall through the cracks.
For sure, for sure. And shout out to HubSpot. They're an amazing client of ours at the moment. So great to see you using them.
I wasn't told to say that by you, I promise.
Exactly. Well, look, you obviously use something, regardless whether HubSpot or not. The tool really doesn't matter, because you've got so much going on, and it's easy to see why you've been listed in so many different lists. If not, everything that I've discussed hasn't impressed you already. One other thing that I wanted to touch on to end this was, you're also the co-founder of Secret Streets Tours. Do you want to spend 30 seconds telling those who might not know what that is, what it is?
Yeah, sure. So it's a non-profit social enterprise that I set up with a friend of mine called Tom Austin. So essentially what it does is it hires people who've been affected by homelessness to be tour guides of their local areas. And what this does is it gives them a platform to tell their story, while also developing skills to move on to further employment and independent living. And it really helps the community, as well as the general public, engage on, I would say, the pressing social issue in Ireland at the moment, which is homelessness. And it's only going to get worse because of the pandemic. It's only going to get worse. So we started that back at the end of 2018. It was when we did our first tours. We were just named a finalist in the Wheel Charity Impact Awards for a small charity.
Amazing.
So that was the Wheel is the national body in Ireland for charity organizations. We didn't win. We were top 5. Unfortunately, we didn't win. But it's a great project, and I just think it's something where it affects everyone, and we become a bit numb to it. And just if people want to take anything away, if they see someone who is homeless, and they pass them on, just treat them like a human being. Say hello.
Yeah.
You know, just ask and just acknowledge that they're there. Because a lot of the time when people that we've worked with have their lives turned around, it's when someone actually treats them like a human being. We're too numb to the fact that we just would walk past them.
Yeah.
Just kind of annoy, and you don't have to. You don't have to go and try and solve all their problems, because it's not possible all the time. People don't have those resources, and there are great organizations like Dublin Simon, who we're partnered with, who provide various services to the homeless in Dublin. But just acknowledge them as human beings.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's been a very powerful project to be involved in, and I'm very fortunate that when Tom did a similar walking experience in Vienna, he came back and asked if I'd be willing to help him start it, because I had started my own business with Equine MediRecord, and I said, of course, I'd love to.
I love the idea of it. I was chatting to my girlfriend about it over the weekend, because every time we go to a new city, we do those, what they're called free walking tours. But if you have any heart, you'll give some money at the end of the tour to the person. So I love the idea of it. If I'm not mistaken, there's virtual tours at the moment. So what does that look like? The website, if you want to shout it out, and then like, do I just go on, pick a time, and then I just get told a Zoom kind of story of that area?
Exactly. So it's www.secretstreettours.org. And so you can book a tour right now, given that we're back in level 3 restrictions. There are in-person ones at the moment. You have to wear a mask, you have to be socially distanced. We adhere to all the government guidelines. I think we had a school out yesterday, so we do a lot with schools, and kind of they find it as a great educational tool for their students. So and we've had great support from schools over the years. But yeah, you can book the tours right on the website and find out the times. If we go back into restrictions again, then they go virtual again. So we'll have virtual tours again. And once again, as you said, you'll be sent a link. You simply click the link, and then what they do is they show you various videos and pictures of the tour you would have done.
Awesome. Well, look, it's fantastic idea, and thank you for your time today, for chatting with me, and hopefully those who've listened have taken something away from it. Anyone who's listened, this podcast, we dive into a number of the 13 blind spots that can otherwise harm a healthy business. You can download the blind spot survey to find out how you rank on a scale of 0 to 100 if your business is in danger and what areas to look at in the comment field below, wherever you're listening to this podcast or if you're watching it. And Pierce, I'll include links to your LinkedIn website. Anything else you'd like me to include on there?
No, that's perfect. LinkedIn's a good one.
Awesome.
If people have questions, apologize if I don't get back to you straight away, but I do try my best to keep an eye on.
You're certainly a busy guy with everything you're juggling at the moment, and I wish you success. Hopefully the meeting in April goes ahead in the US, and that you can leverage the Breeders' Cup success story to potentially grow even further. But lastly, I'd like to thank you, but say that, look, your growth has been phenomenal regardless, and I recognize the passion you have for it, but also where you want to take it. And I know that you'll do great things. And thank you for your time today.
No, thanks for having me, Rian.